First of all, I like it. I like to see my books adapted to either opera or radio plays or movies. It tells me that these artists found it relevant to them and inspiring to them. I'm known to be a very permissive writer when it comes to adaptation, because I said, do not imitate what I did. I did what I did, and that was enough. If you stick to that, if you do not recreate my work into your language, then what's the point? It will be like a bird flying with one wing flapping on the ground and the other tries to take off. Yes, and even more so, I asked to come in the very beginning of the rehearsals to tell the actors and the director how I see this book, what is my interpretation. They don't have to stick to it, as I said, but I want them to understand, or let's say to hear in their inner ear the melody that I hear when I write it. First of all, because I was unable to understand the language, I understood more, or I was attentive more to the music, for example, for the rhythm of the show. And it's a very energetic show, energetic and vital, some moments even overwhelming. When there was an intermission, I felt I go back breathing with both lungs. It's strange, you know, because I understand, let's say, 20–40% of the German, but I'm more tuned now to the German and to the acting on stage and to what happened between the relationship between the actors. No, first because I start to feel the Deutsche Theater is a kind of a home theater after 3 adaptations. And they were very good adaptations, I think. And the book, it was published in 2008 in Israel, in Hebrew, and then later in some other languages. And the book is very much alive and vivid, and people react to it in Israel and in some other countries as if it was written lately, because the questions it asks and the situations that it describes are actually universal and beyond time. And they talk very much about how are we not able to set ourselves free from our scars, from the scars that war has engraved in us. I think the book tells about the layers of grief and how grief changes us, and how we become sometimes addicted to grief, and how we should try to set ourselves free, not in the meaning of forgetting our wound or our trauma, not at all, how can we? But in trying, as I said before, trying to look at the trauma from a small change of view, just to allow ourselves this freedom. And suddenly, it's not that we pain more or less, but we allow the trauma to become again a part of us and not something that is imposed on us. I think if the trauma repeats itself again and again without any development, then it's destructive. It doesn't lead us anywhere. The power of art is that it is telling old stories with new words. We tell the story of the trauma, of the loneliness of Ora, of fears, anxieties, violence, all that is in the book. But I'm always afraid when there is such a story in which we describe the trauma, that we become after a while prisoners of this trauma, unable to set ourselves free, totally paralyzed by the trauma. Art allows us some room to maneuver. Still, we tell the story of the trauma, but we tell it from, let's say, 1 centimeter to the left or to the right, and suddenly the story becomes different. Suddenly we are not trapped by it, and we are able to stand anew in front of what has previously paralyzed us. It's a great thing that art can do, both for the artist and for the audience. it recreated itself, this wonderful, stunning video art work. And it is something that, well, I might try to recreate it in my writing, if my writing necessitates that. This is the place where I can learn from adaptations. You see, it's very rare, but it happens. And this time I felt that it taught me something, mainly about the intensity, the inner life, the intensity of the inner life of people who live in such a trauma, in such a conflict that prevailed for almost 100 years. And suddenly there was a slightly different way to tell this story of this trauma. Well, there are advantages for each and every one of them. The advantage of theater is that you have a person, flesh and blood, on stage in front of you, and there is nothing like the presence of the individual, of the human being. And you cannot compete it. You need to write thousands of words in order to describe something that an actor on stage does, like that, or a smile, or a gesture, or a gaze. Literature has its power from the most deep nuances, I feel, even deeper than theater or cinema. Well, music has the ability to recreate reality. But I stick to writing. I find it such a blessing and such a place of comfort and of meaningfulness.